Hi, my name is Terry. I have 3 college degrees, including a master's degree from an Ivy League university. I'm fluent in 2 languages, and I have a commercial driver's license, which allows me to operate heavy trucks, and I still can't find a job. My girlfriend works at a fast food restaurant. She's been working there for the past 9 years, but what she really wants to do is be an elementary school teacher. So every day I'm going to be coming on here and telling you guys stories about things that I think are interesting or cool. And then I'm going to teach you a little bit of Spanish until I can earn enough money to send my girl to teaching school. So today we're talking about Dr. Martin Luther King, a very well-known figure, but there may be some details about his story that you'd never heard before. So he was assassinated on a hotel balcony on April 4th, 1968. And in his final years before his assassination, he was always on edge. He was always looking over his shoulder, paranoid, and rightfully so, because it was almost as if he could sense what was coming. He received death threats at his home each night while he and his family were eating dinner. And sometimes he was invited to be a guest preacher at people's churches. And when he preached, he would always talk about his inevitable assassination, and he was always afraid. Even though he preached nonviolence, he knew exactly how this would end ultimately. And at a conference that took place the day before his assassination, he spoke, and in his speech he said this: "I just want to do God's will. He's allowed me to go up the mountain, and I've looked over and I've seen the promised land. And I want you to know, I may not get there with you, but I want you to know today that we as a people will make it to the promised land." He also talked about longevity and how longevity had its place and it was something that would be nice, but he knew deep down that that wasn't in his future. So, before he became this kind of larger-than-life Martin Luther King figure that we all know, he actually almost passed away twice by suicide when he was a child. The first time he was playing in the house with his little brother, when his brother slid down the banister of their home, and when he jumped off, he hit his grandmother, and she hit the ground and didn't move. Well, King thought that she was dead, so he ran upstairs and jumped out his bedroom window in an attempt to kill himself. Well, he was fine. And when he came back inside, he discovered that she actually wasn't dead, but that she was just unconscious. On the second occasion, he really wanted to go to a parade, but he wasn't allowed to go. So he snuck out of the house, and he was enjoying the parade, and while he was having his fun, he ran into a friend, and that friend told him, "Look, man, if I were you, I would get home. I think you need to get home as quickly as possible." So King listened to his friend, and when he got home, he found out that his grandmother had had a heart attack and died while he was out having his fun. The guilt was eating him alive because he was convinced that the reason why she died was because God was punishing him for his disobedience in sneaking out of the house to go to the parade. And he couldn't take the immense guilt that plagued him, and so he threw himself out of the bedroom window again. This time he wasn't as lucky as last time. First of all, when he hit the ground, he was actually pretty banged up. And when he finally made it back inside, his grandmother, of course, wasn't alive. She wasn't there to tell him that everything was going to be okay. And so the death of his grandmother really started a chain reaction in which he started to heavily question his beliefs about religion and about life. See, he grew up in a household with his father, who was also an ordained minister, but his father was one of those real old school fundamentalist evangelical preachers, a real fire and brimstone, burn in hell type of guy. And as King was growing up, he believed everything he was told without question. And so when his grandmother died, he really believed that he was responsible for her death, and that he was the one who had killed her. And the grief and the guilt caused him to question his beliefs on religion for the very first time. And he continued to question as he got older until finally in his second year of college, he didn't even want to go to church anymore. And he regretted going to church and never wanted to go again. Instead, he founded his own philosophy of religion. And his questioning nature ended up helping him later in life as a civil rights leader because he was open to new ideas, because he was open-minded. In fact, the people who worked with him, the people who worked around him, and his staff members, they loved him because they could actually talk to him. They were able to openly debate with him about new ideas, and he would actually listen to them. So he spent his early adulthood in the North, where his college was located, getting his education. Once he completed his education, he returned to Montgomery, Alabama, because he felt like the civil rights movement needed him. And so at 26 years old, he joined the NAACP to organize the Montgomery bus boycott. And so what that was about was that there was racial segregation on buses. And so in order to change that, he and the NAACP together organized a boycott of the use of the buses altogether. That boycott lasted for 1 year, and during that time, his house was bombed, while his wife and his children were inside. Thankfully, they were able to escape, and they survived unharmed. But this makes the movement increasingly difficult for him because he's willing to die for the movement. But for the first time, he's forced to confront the fact that he's not just putting himself in danger, but he's also putting his family in danger by speaking out for what he believes. And so he has to deal with this idea that his family may actually be hurt because of his activism in a way that he never had to deal with it before the bombing. And so the boycott ends after a year, and Dr. King writes a book about the success of the boycott called A Stride Toward Freedom. Now, he is actually at a book signing for this book, A Stride Toward Freedom. And while he's at the book signing, a mentally ill African-American woman named Izola Curry comes up to him. And she asks him, she says, "Are you Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.?" And as soon as he said, "Yes, I am," she takes out a letter opener and stabs him straight through the chest. And even though she was deeply mentally ill, she was able to articulate in part why she did what she did. And what she said was that she hated Dr. King's movement because she was afraid that his activism would stir up hatred among white racists. And she didn't want him to stir the pot because his activism, she believed, would put all black people in danger, including herself. And she wasn't entirely unfounded with that belief because his activism did anger white racists who were determined to take him down. In fact, on one particular occasion, his friend Ralph Abernathy was attacked by a man. And so when Dr. King was walking toward the courtroom to sit in on the trial of the man who attacked him, 2 white police officers tried to block his path and keep him from being able to go in the door. So Dr. King peeked his head into a crack in the door in order to find his lawyer to be able to come out and help him get in. Well, when he puts his head into the crack in the door, this enrages the 2 white police officers. They grab him immediately and twist his arm painfully behind his back. They choke him by the collar and they throw him in jail. And this is what he said in a letter that he wrote about what happened on that day. He said, "They tried to break my arm. They grabbed me by my collar, choking me. When they got to the cell, they kicked me inside." And photographers actually caught some of this on film, and you can see that in the picture behind me. This is the original photo. So in 1962, he's speaking at a conference when all of a sudden a big white dude just rushes the stage and attacks him. He hits him with his fist once across the left side of his cheek, boom, and then he hits him again, the same spot across the left side of his cheek, boom, and King staggers back and almost loses his balance. And then the man starts beating him in his back, hitting him, boom, 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 in the base of his spine. And so then Dr. King turns around to face the man, but when he faces the man, he has his hands down by his sides instead of retaliating or trying to defend himself. And so finally, eventually the staff at the event moved to intervene and to intercept the man. And as they moved to intervene, Dr. King says, no, don't touch him, don't touch him, don't hurt him. We have to pray for him. And so after this happened, Dr. King, a few of his allies and staffers, and the man who attacked him disappear into a back room behind the stage. And when they came back out, Dr. King finishes his speech, and as he's speaking, he has a handkerchief filled with ice pressed against his cheek where he was struck. And he explains to the crowd that the attacker revealed that he identified as a member of the American Nazi Party. He also said that he wouldn't press charges against the man, instead opting to pray for his assailant. And then he just continues on with his speech as normal. And the crowd was amazed, watching the way he handled the situation, watching the way in which he didn't try to defend himself or fight back, even though the man was much larger, much taller and bigger, and the man was hitting him hard. And then hearing that he had decided not to press charges because this was a person who had used his words to advocate for nonviolent resistance, but a lot of people use their words. But they got to see through his actions that he was actually serious about forgiveness and about nonviolent resistance in all cases, no matter what. So if you'd like to hear a part 2 to this story, drop a comment below. And here's the word of the day for the Spanish that I'm going to teach you. Lo siento, which means I'm sorry. If you want to support this work that I do, there will be a link to the Cashapp in the description box below. And if you have a specific topic that you'd like to see me do a video on, drop a comment down below.